Alrighty, good afternoon. My name is Andreas Dieckow, Principal Product Manager for the Database Platform Group. I'm doing this IRIS Adoption. We internally refer to this IRIS Adoption Initiative. It's a lot of things that happen around this. So we started as roughly summer of last year, August last year. And I think we have made some good progress since then. So this is what we want to share with you. In the session here, originally, I just want to talk a little bit about InterSystems IRIS very lightly about this, give you some differentiators between the Caché, Ensemble, CE platforms, and InterSystems IRIS. And then the majority or a very heavy aspect of the session is how do I get my code from where I am today to InterSystems IRIS, which is the first step of a two-step process for most customers. And then what is available and what are we working on over the next few weeks and months. So starting out with InterSystems IRIS, it's a platform for rapid application development. It's really a new product, which is really key to understand for the entire sessions that are around this. And there are two sessions. One is this one, which is talking about how do I get my code from Caché and Ensemble onto InterSystems IRIS. The other part is I have all these deployments out there. How do I take an existing instance and convert this into InterSystems IRIS? It's a different session. Happens later today. So if you want to participate in that aspect too, that's not covered as part of this session here. So InterSystems IRIS platform has a lot of attributes in it. Has specific data models. Overall, it's a very focused platform. We try to really make sure that we move technology forward that we know is relevant. There's a lot of people standing back there. There's still some seats in between. I can offer one share for premium seat in the front if somebody wants to use it. I need one to sit down because I do a little demo, but one person can have a really premium seat if you want to. And it's important to understand that we not have moved everything forward. Not everything that is in Caché and Ensemble works in InterSystems IRIS. Most of the things that are not there anymore are functioning. Probably no customer even noticed about this. So we removed a lot of things that we accumulated over the years and nobody has anymore. But we really try to slim down the system, which gives us new opportunity to do new things that we couldn't do in the past. So we do a compare between platforms. Who's familiar with Caché and Ensemble in this room? Yes, great. So who's familiar with InterSystems IRIS yet? Who has tried InterSystems IRIS? Okay, a few. Well, I hope I will convince the rest that it's actually really easy, which it really is. So from Caché and Ensemble, you know what kind of system it is. It's fast. We always had performance in mind and really tried to work very hard on this. This continues now with InterSystems IRIS. So we do a lot of additional work for performance improvements, and you will see this all happening on InterSystems IRIS. No enhancements that we're doing for InterSystems IRIS is going to be in Caché and Ensemble anymore. So that's the basic cut in between, unless for a few exceptions. I will mention them later. So with InterSystems IRIS, instead of vertical scalability, you're not getting horizontal scalability. We have more performance improvements that we put in SQL. With InterSystems IRIS, you get higher throughput for shared memory and smarter drivers, broader language support, and very heavy implementations of containers inside the product. So there's a lot of container stuff coming out. You probably have seen this over the last few months already. There's more coming out, more cloud support, more ways of dealing with containers. We're supporting OCI containers, so for independence, for vendor independence, so it's not only running on a Docker store. We're coming out with our own InterSystems own deployment model, but we're also going to support Kubernetes. So there's a lot of functionality that will come in this area. You heard in this morning that Scott Knau's announcement. We're now having full API support in InterSystems IRIS. and additional protocols and adapters for the integration engine. We now have added machine learning elements for the quick ML. You saw this, heard this morning, Spark connectors, data wrangling. So a lot of functionality that is in there. And health share, there's 2 products that belong to the database platform group that we own from the health share point of view, which is Health Share Health Connect and IRIS for Health. The other products are in another department, so I can't really talk about those because I'm not really familiar with how those products work. But here, these are vital for us because they're also going to be targets eventually to really move an existing application forward. So if you have done a health share application, and probably anybody in the room, how many people are in health share here? Yeah, so it's a lot, right? So for you, you have to wait until the in-place conversion for you will come because we're not having reached that phase yet. We're starting this actually right after this Global Summit. We'll talk about this a little later. But then you have options of where you want to go with your existing environment. Health Share Health Connect customers can already do this. But if you have Health Share Health Connect and you don't want to go to InterSystems IRIS for Health, then you still have to wait a little bit until we enable that functionality and tested this ourselves. So an InterSystems IRIS for Health is an entire new product that we didn't do. I wanted to give a quick demonstration over something, basically in the area of performance. And I'm going to switch or try to switch screens. Is that readable in the back? Oh, it is? Somebody says yes, somebody said no. I tried to make this bigger, but then it's not looking that good anymore. So let me just make one bigger first, and then maybe I switch back between big and small. So I have a small benchmarking program here I've written that does something really simple, right? It created 20 million records. I'm connected to a virtual machine back in Cambridge in the office at One Memorial Drive because that wouldn't work here so very well on my small computer. And it's a multiple core system, so it's not a small system, but not a large system. I have about 10 gigabytes of shared memory, I think, for the global buffers. So nothing really overly complicated or huge. And so what we did at the beginning, well, probably end of last year, is starting to look, how can we scan through a global block faster, right? How can we build this entire system faster? So if we do something simple tests here, then it just does these kind of things. You can see what it does. It's really simple, and we get some feedback back on how fast it is. On the left side, this is InterSystems. This is Caché that is running, and it's an 8-bit version of Caché. And on this side, we're running an 8-bit version of InterSystems IRIS. And so if I repeat the same thing here, I would expect better performance than 2 seconds, and we're slightly better in the performance over this. So these are just simple things that we have done in the underlying mechanism to scan through the data block faster, which is already a pretty fast scan if you remember how the product works. But if you put more stress on this, I'm not going to do all options here, just try to give you a little highlight over this. So now I do a reverse scan to the system. And if you remember how the product works, it's basically based on all the optimizations we do in the database where we compress information, right? We don't replicate all the elements of the previous string in the next string to have really compressed information in the data block. So it's a forward scan, which is, a backward scan can be pretty complex, right, on Caché and Ensemble. And with the new algorithms, if I do the same thing, because it has a different approach now of doing this, this is much faster, right? So if you have existing applications, just going to InterSystems IRIS, just from this small test alone, you see 20-25% performance improvements in your application, just going through the InterSystems IRIS platform. There's a lot more in the pipeline that we're working on in this area. And there's another session Benjamin DeBow is having. Look on the agenda, I actually forgot when it is. It's called SQL Performance, Need for Speed. It's not just about talking about SQL, it talks a wide variety of things that we're working on. And it's actually a huge amount of things that are still in the pipeline, hopefully appearing then with 2020, early spring next year. So, maybe you're enticed and you want to move to InterSystems IRIS. How do you do this? So the first step that you have to do is you have to port your application to InterSystems IRIS. InterSystems has written what we call the InterSystems IRIS Adoption Guide, and it describes the differences between Caché and Ensemble. Internally, we often refer to this as just CE. You might find slides where I'm having this in. So if you see C/E, that means Caché and Ensemble. And describes the differences between both products. And I will talk a little bit about what to look out for, and then give you a quick introduction into how the conversion process will look like. So when you adopt the adoption guide as it describes the process, you have to make a decision how you want to do so. So at the beginning, you somewhere have a Caché, let's say a Caché instance that you want to take the application code from. You take the code, put it into InterSystems IRIS, you compile it, it either works or it doesn't. If it doesn't, then it will give you errors, and you can take a look at what these errors are. You don't have to do so. You can read the IRIS Adoption Guide and figure out beforehand what happens, because it will tell you what the differences are. And we'll talk about some of the differences. We're not talking about all the contents in the IRIS Adoption Guide, but there's a common theme to all of this, which is easy to detect how this works. And once you have this code on InterSystems IRIS, well, that's working. It's going actually really fast. We have customers that have taken their existing application and that did this entire work within less than a day. It depends on how much functionality you're really using from the technology point of view, and what is your overall strategy of adjusting to it. Now, when you try to move forward with this, one important consideration that you want to have at this point is, how do I actually want to move forward with this? Do I really want to have an IRIS application and a Caché application, or do I want to build something that is a common code base, right? So one common code base that can run as well on InterSystems IRIS as Caché, so the system automatically detects what it is. So if you later convert an instance from Caché or Ensemble to InterSystems IRIS, and you already have a common code-based system in place, which understands also IRIS, your life is much easier, right? Because you just convert it to InterSystems IRIS, the application code is already aware of the InterSystems IRIS syntax, and you can just run and work like this. So this is, at this point, what you want to consider. You want to have a clear cut, two code bases, or do you want to steer towards one common code base going forward? So helping you to get there. So when you start thinking about this, the first thing you need to figure out is what are the differences between both environments. The first one is going to be platform and browsers. The list of what is supported between both product lines are not identical. Some of them are there. We cut a lot of things out that we don't think are relevant anymore or nobody's using anymore. So example, InterSystems IRIS does not run on HP, right? Does not run on any 32-bit platform, right? Only runs on Red Hat 8, the latest version, not Red Hat 6, right? So that's something that you need to look at, and is part of your consideration for porting the application, but also more along the line on later on when you want to do the conversion in the field, because you need to be on something that InterSystems IRIS supports. So if you're running on, let's say, Red Hat 6, and you want to do the in-place conversion, because InterSystems IRIS doesn't run on this platform, that will not work. You need to get it on a platform first, right? Now, if you have run in these kind of situations, don't immediately give up because it doesn't work, or there might be differences about this. Your first approach, after maybe getting a little frustrated with this, always reach out to us, right? We can see what we can do to help you in making this work. Trying to keep the platform list for InterSystems IRIS as small and lightweight as possible, but I'm also not just blindly blocking out everything. I still have a primed seat and available in the front here if somebody wants to take it. It's probably more for my own good that I'm not feeling so bad that there's so many people, unfortunately, say. So one of the biggest changes, we have to do naming changes, right? So there's a lot in Caché and Ensemble, specifically in Caché, that has Caché in it, right? or has the C somewhere in it that represents Caché. So we didn't want to move this forward into InterSystems IRIS because it is really a different product. It's not a next version of Caché and Ensemble, even so a lot of the underlying technology that we took from Caché and Ensemble and moved them forward. So you will see this as a common pattern. So there are changes in it, and what is the change? It has something to do with it because there's a C, we moved it to IRIS. In the application development, we've made some changes. Specifically interesting is the SQL, the limited identifier. So we'll talk a little bit about this, and then some behavior changes inside the product between the. And we will get to this in a little bit more detail. They're specifically up around how you write scripts, for example, in your environment. The pain part can be this, when you use technology that is no longer supported with InterSystems IRIS. And I'm not listing everything up here. I mean, if you really want to know what all the details are, I'm just giving some highlights here and pointing out some things in the environment here. There are things that are deprecated, and there are things that are no longer there with InterSystems IRIS. So let's take one example, ZenMojo, for example. ZenMojo is something that doesn't ship with InterSystems IRIS, is, however, still supported if you want to use it. You just have to load it in yourself. We don't ship it with the product. We have very few customers that use ZenMojo. HealthShare team at InterSystems with one of their products is one of them. But not many customers are using it, and so we took it out of the product. We don't want to ship it anymore, just increases the footprint. But if you go through an in-place conversion, you can still load it in and can still work with it. More dramatic are things like DirectX or Visual M, if you remember that name, or WebLink. Those are not shipping with the product, and we don't want anybody to use this technology for a wide variety of reasons. They are in itself not secure, for example. InterSystems cannot also make them secure without making them being something else. We have some customers using this that have built a really secure framework around this, which is fine, but it's not something that comes from us, so we cannot really ship this. But however, we're going to still support them. So we will give you a possibility to still use DirectX. We still allow you to load in WebLink, but you will need a special license key from InterSystems. And so there are certain kind of functionality that we will only support for existing customers, not for new customers or new projects. So a new customer that comes on board or wants to build a new project with WebLink, we will not enable this functionality. If you have an existing application with this kind of technology, we will give you the key and you can continue to use this. You don't have to worry about it. It's also supported. Are there any questions on this particular aspect? Yes?
When it says there that the DeepC visual reports will be phased out, does that say anything related to DeepC?
No, DeepC is full supported. This is just a visual reporter. Yes, DeepC itself is fully in there as a functionality. We removed a few things. I'll get to you in a second. And one of them was, for example, I forgot. We need to wait, everybody, before you speak, wait for the microphone because that's a recorded session. Otherwise, people think what's happening. They're silent for 5 minutes. And so we have taken out a few things that. I lost my train of thought. Your question, please?
Happy to cover for you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have WebLink in a lot of our legacy code,
yes.
And you're saying you could get a special license and still be included. How does that license work with the regular IRIS license?
It's a regular IRIS license. It's a feature bit in the IRIS license key where it has now 2 bits. We have 2 new feature codes in the license key for InterSystems IRIS. One is the compatibility bit, which allows somebody to use technology that we are deprecating for a new development, but is still fully supported. And so ZenMojo would be one of them. And DirectX requires also a security clearance. So you need to create some you need to be aware that these are security stuff, but you get this without any big problems. You just ask for the key and we will give you one if you have an existing customer that has a deployment. So you just need a specific key from it for InterSystems IRIS.
And does that key continue, or is there a timeline? Is there a timeline that those keys would be phased out, or what's the future for it?
Ideally, of course, I would like to get rid of all of this kind of technology, right? I mean, why do I have to carry around this? Reality is, it will never happen unless there are a significant amount of customers using this. So we have no plans to stop this unless it's already announced, right? Then there is. Zen is a weird thing in this entire picture, right? Because Zen is something we deprecate for new development. We're not going to feature code it because we're using Zen, right? Portal is based on Zen, right? And in the long run, Zen has to go away because the industry is changing the way browsers work, which is the foundation for the pipeline communication of Zen. So the industry will take away the core communication models for Zen. So we'll all have to get away because of the industry wants to go away, right? So we'll have to figure out how to deal with this. So Zen is something we all need to get rid of, which is why it's already deprecated, even so InterSystems is still using it, and therefore all customers are using it, right, that are using this. This is a very unfortunate situation. This is something we will do post-Global Summit. We will start building some communications around this and raise more awareness about this. If you want to know more about this in all glory detail, meet Steve Morrison in the Tech Exchange. He's our person of Zen. He knows he can tell you all the glory details about why Zen is dying and has to die. But overall, okay, that sounds very dramatic. It's a happy talk, sorry. But we just have to deal with this. It's not helping us. So talking about some of the differences, so this is a good example of detecting the pattern thing, right? Caché and Ensemble has a C control. We renamed this to IRIS in InterSystems IRIS. There's a C session. Now it's called IRIS session. C stat is IRIS stat. I don't have to read this. You can read too. So you see a lot of these kind of things happening. We list them all out so you can see this. So if you later want to know, and they are mostly predictable in how they work, not always totally predictable. A caché.dat becomes an iris.dat, caché log file, iris log file, caché use. Yeah. And so here I want to just mention a caché.dat, a database has not changed its format. You can take an existing database from Caché and Ensemble and mount it onto InterSystems IRIS. You just have to make sure that you rename it, right? Because it doesn't know the IRIS name, it does not know caché.dat. Make sure when you move the database, it was shut down from the instance. You don't have a in-between state with your database, because that would be bad, right? But other than this, you can just take an existing database, mount it into InterSystems IRIS, and it will just work, continue to work. So if you have already separation between data and routines, right, you can just take your existing database and just mount it over there, and you're done with that process, because the adoption adjustments happen all on the routine level, not on the data level. And who's aware that InterSystems IRIS is Unicode only? Good. Oh, true. It's not true anymore. So we changed that. So InterSystems IRIS now supports full non-Unicode databases, or a lot of times we refer to this as 8-bit databases, which is nonsense. There is no such thing as an 8-bit database. But it's non-Unicode databases in the same way as you have with Caché, right? So if you have a Caché application that is non-Unicode, it converts one-to-one to InterSystems IRIS, no changes, everything is still there, and it will continue to work. You can also install InterSystems IRIS as an 8-bit system. Actually, earlier what we used on the benchmark was a non-Unicode version for InterSystems IRIS. So also a little dramatic here. So we've changed the quoting system. Caché was very forgiving with this. It allowed a mix between double and single quotes. InterSystems IRIS is enforcing the SQL standard, which says you have to use single quotes. So if you try to do this, it will not work. And we would like to have all customers change this. We have a flag in the product that allows you to overwrite this. So if you really don't want to do this, you can, but we really would like to encourage this, so forget that there is a flag. Yes?
So like in the DTL editor, if you put 6 double quotes together,
This is only for SQL.
Only for SQL, that's what.
Something in the back wants somebody from you, and I have no idea. I'll repeat the question, we forgot that you...
My question was in the DTL editor if this changed for
No.
like HL7.
No,
or
it has not.
something.
No. Okay, so these are just the entire differences. When you look at the conversion demo that we're giving today as part of the IRIS conversion session, which carries you through the entire process, they will actually use this quoting as an example. So you're all smarter than the presenters in there. You know you could have just used the switch instead of making a code change. But it's about changing the code, right? It's about making a point how easy that could be in this all. So then for object script development, there are changes, right? A few of them are just called ISC, and now called IRIS. Caché temp, as such, does not exist, but still works. We're just mapping this internally out. Caché audit is now IRIS audit, so we're trying to bring a little bit more structure in it and a little bit more consistency here, but no real big surprises in it. And there's more on each of these. I just picked one of the tables and put them here on the slide and put them out there. So big difference is InterSystems IRIS does require its own license key. So if you want to do this with InterSystems IRIS, you can either take advantage of one of the things that we're shipping for free. There's a try example that you can get. You can use the community edition that gives you a Caché build. We just published, we replaced actually the free Caché download with an InterSystems IRIS download, where you get now the community edition, which is enabled for development. So if you want to do this, you can take your code and put it on this. Not only containers anymore, works on Red Hat, so on all Linux versions, and Mac OS and Windows. So you can do that to make this all happen. But you need to have a new license key for it. So there are differences between these. Importing, you can export code and import this. But between these products, we changed the version number in the XML file. So if in certain kind of situations where you want to import this and it doesn't seem to recognize this, just change the number in it to the other version number. It will still all work. It's all documented in the adoption guide on what happens there. So C control versus IRIS. So if you have built scripts on your environment, which a lot of customers do to automate a lot of things, you will have to change them as well. So this is not covered by, it's not part of the product change, of course. It's not covered by the conversion. So that's something where you have to look at your IRIS in your scripts and do a manual conversion. But it's an important step to do. I also want to point out, because this is a name change that is apparently not very obvious, because we didn't put IRIS in the name it, but the C console log is now called messages log. Maybe we should have been a little bit more consistent there with the name too, but that's what it's called. And then the executable, it's also not intuitive, which is why I bring this out. So a caché.executable is not called IRIS, it's called IRISDB. So there is an IRIS adoption guide available. You can download this. It's already available for a long time. We will maintain this on the WRC download server. Here's a link to it. If you know how to get there anyway, it's in the documentation section. These slides are part of in the app if you want to look at this, so if you don't have to write down the link about this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about conversion, but before we're going there, are there any questions on adopting this? I mean, getting the code done is really simple. It's really that simple, but it requires also work and requires some testing, of course. Classes have changed. Most of them are automatically resolving themselves by recompiling. So you just take the existing application, recompile it. The class system tries to do most of the stuff itself, because Most of the changes are in parent classes you inherit from, and it will just automatically then trickle down the chain. Not always the case for all environments. Are there any questions? Okay, then we'll move on. So the conversion process, so that's a separate session. I mentioned that already. Performing an upgrade of installation will convert an instance in the process. So what a conversion process is you get from a Caché and Ensemble instance and you end up with a real InterSystems IRIS instance. So this is not Caché or Ensemble modified or anything. This is actually InterSystems IRIS. So for example, if your Caché instance has ZenMojo installed and you convert this to InterSystems IRIS, after this it will not have ZenMojo, right? Because InterSystems IRIS doesn't know about ZenMojo, right? So it's a very different mechanism. We support Unicode and non-Unicode, and we support the process with failover mirrors. So that means that as you go through this entire process, and you will see this in the demo today as well, when you have two failover mirrors, you can take one of them down, right? Convert this to InterSystems IRIS, bring it up again, and now you run in a mixed mirror environment. One instance is Caché Ensemble, the other one is InterSystems IRIS, and they can continue to talk to each other and make this happen. Overall, this process is really fast. So how it starts out with, you want to install InterSystems IRIS on your system. It's similar to what you do with Caché and Ensemble. When you maybe have already a Caché instance installed in your system, and you say, I want to install Caché, it will now ask you, do you want to install a new instance of Caché, or do you want to upgrade that existing one that sits already here? Right? That's a typical upgrade installation process. InterSystems IRIS functions exactly the same. The registries are different between both products. So there's a Caché registry, and there's an IRIS registry. But the IRIS installer registry will also look into the Caché registry. So you can pick an instance that is really a Caché instance or Ensemble instance, and pick this as part of your upgrade strategy. When you do this, the system on Windows will actually tell you that this is a conversion. But if you do this on Unix, it will now tell you that this is a Caché and Ensemble instance. You're really now doing something other than an upgrade. You're really now doing a conversion. And it's important to know that you're really doing this, because doing a conversion is a one-way street. You cannot go back, right? This is really an InterSystems IRIS instance. You cannot somehow magically go back to the previous one unless you restore that instance from a backup, right? So you have to be really clear about this, right? And in order to be really clear about this, there is a bunch of things we really want to make sure that you really have a clean state. So there's a documentation a document out there, we call this the conversion guide, which is extremely detailed about this. And it tries to tell you like all the pre-steps that you should do, like making sure that your config file is correct, right? So that you don't run into errors during this entire process. You start out with a clean state, check the checklist. If you have everything in there, you should be fine. Do the conversion, then there's a post list that gets you to the process. Overall, this is really fast. It's almost identical to the time that you have for an upgrade installation on Unix. It's a little longer because it converts internal tables that are different, right? It's kind of data dependent how long this is. So overall is really fast. So not something that is really a concern from the performance point of view. So I can invite you all to the other system. So what have we done with this already? So we already have done the HealthShare Health Connect conversion. We did this early this year. That was the easiest for us to do because InterSystems owns the code. We own the application, so you don't have to worry about anything. You only have data on there, right? So we took 18.1, right? 18.1 became already the first version of InterSystems HealthShare Health Connect that was based on InterSystems IRIS. So if you took a previous version and upgraded this, it took the Ensemble instance, converted it to InterSystems IRIS, and now HealthShare Health Connect already runs on this. We have several customers that have already done this successfully, and that works just great. Just to explain to you how easy this process is, I have one customer in Germany that is having a Caché instance that's pretty old, sitting on OpenVMS. InterSystems IRIS doesn't support OpenVMS. It will never support OpenVMS over my dead body. And, so I asked him, do you want to do the conversion? He said, well, we're running on OpenVMS. It makes no sense. Surprisingly, the next day he came back and says, I tried it out. And so he took his database from his OpenVMS system, moved it to a Windows system, installed Caché on that instance, mounted that database on that instance, then went to the conversion, changed his application to make this work, ran through the conversion process all in one day. And after this, he had a successful application that runs on InterSystems IRIS with all its data that came from an OpenVMS system. So it can be really simple. I'm not saying it's always the time, but for most customers, it doesn't seem to be a complex process. So 2019-1 supports already the in-place conversion for Health Connect. We're planning to release 2019-1.1, hopefully coming out soon. 19.1.1 will support the in-place conversion to InterSystems IRIS for all versions that does not have the word health in it, right? So don't take anything with HL7 where you use HL7 and try to move this to InterSystems IRIS. We still need to do that aspect, right? But everything else, which is a lot of customers, they can already upgrade this. We went through this with a field test as well. Everybody could convert this. There were conversions with Unicode and non-Unicode databases in it. Customers that have already previously done this, so they just were interested in this conversion process. They already did all the adoption one. If you remember, LibIT at the conference last year talked about that. So what is available today, what is coming? So one of the things we're doing for coexistence between both environments is we're supporting ECP for version 2016.2 and later between both product lines, but for data only because the class format, routine format and class format can be different between both products. We don't support this for classes and routines. But if you have an existing Caché and Ensemble instance and maybe you want to already participate in an IRIS sharding environment, you can connect with ECP into this environment and therefore take advantage already of some of the InterSystems IRIS functionality prior to moving to InterSystems IRIS with your existing environment. I mentioned earlier that we're not putting all enhancements back into Caché and Ensemble. I said there are exceptions. And there is a certain kind of suites of software that we will maintain for compatibility reasons between both product lines. And the main thing that we're going to support in this area is LDAP. So LDAP are going to be compatible between both environments. So if you set up mixed mirrored environments and you have LDAP in your environment, you can have one security model between both product lines, and you don't have to do this separate and keep this also in sync. I already mentioned mixed mirror configuration requires at least Caché and Ensemble versions of 2016.2 and later. That's also a common theme. Everything that goes back 16.2 and later. Is it supported there? Yes, 2016.2 and later. So that's the timeline. That's the version that is the cutoff for everything was going forward. So number 1 and 2 were easy to do. They could have done this right from the beginning, and some of them have done this. Doesn't require anything really. Then we did the in-place conversion upgrade. That was phase number 3. We just completed phase number 4. Was 2019-1.1. As we release it, it will then be available to you. And now we're starting the in-place conversion to InterSystems IRIS for Health. And that will enable you to take anything that you want and either upgrade this to InterSystems IRIS Health, Share Health Connect, or InterSystems IRIS for Health. The Health Share team itself is also working on their product line so that all of their products are going to be able to do this process of moving from Caché, or in their case Ensemble, to InterSystems IRIS, and they will have this available in the first quarter of next year. So you want to start, you can do this. I mentioned this already. There is a community edition available. This is where the link is. If you go to the developer community, you can go there and download this and start right now. It's available for all of these platforms. Questions? I cannot possibly have done this sort of a good job. All right, true, I feel better. Please.
For the ECP support, you had the requirements there. Is IRIS for Health, does that support ECP as well?
Yes. Yes, all InterSystems IRIS or IRIS-based products support this already.
You talk about IRIS being the strategic product for InterSystems. What about Caché and Ensemble? I think I saw a slide in another session where version 2018.1 was planned for the beginning of 2020. Working for the company I work for, we have a lot of installations of Caché and Ensemble. I know there's a lot of enhancements being put into IRIS, and that's probably why a lot of the additional capabilities are being sought. But what is the future plan for Caché and Ensemble as a strategic product for InterSystems?
Caché and IRIS will, Caché and Ensemble will continue to exist. We're not retiring them.
But there were no releases this year, 2019, and in 2020.
There
it's
is
still
one. There is one in the pipeline right now.
Okay.
There are. So 19.1.1 was. We tried to release 3 products last Friday, and we couldn't. And so one of them is Caché version because we wanted to make sure that customers don't ask that question. We wanted to get 2019.1.1 out because it looks better. It's out, right? You don't have to wait. You can do it now. We found a problem in our QD testing where in a mirror environment, the failover mirror sometimes does not get all updates. And we cannot reliably reproduce this right now, which means we can't fix it. So we can't release the product with that problem. This is why this is on hold. So it's imminent, but unless we know what the reproduction is or how to reproduce it, it can take 2 weeks before we even know how this will work. So I cannot make any predictions, but there is one coming out this year, and they will continue to come out on a frequent basis. There are 2 questions. I forgot who is the first.
So historically, like ODBC drivers and Studio have been backwards compatible. Are the ones that would work with IRIS compatible with Ensemble? Or?
No, they're sadly not compatible. And it's actually surprisingly of a big investment to do. So we're looking into this. That might change, but right now it's not planned as a task. Yes?
Yes, I was just wondering, as far as porting applications, is it more, to get them to work, is it more or less a brute force compiling and finding the errors, or is there a tool or coming out or being considered that you could parse your code and say this is incompatible because this or this, or you just have to brute force?
Now you want to just test it after on it, you just compile it, and if it compiles clean, you still have to do QD on it, making sure your applications will work. The nature of the technology is that, yes, we could build a tool that gets you somewhere there, but never 100%, not even 90%, because of all the wonderful capabilities of the language, right? I can do indirects, right? I can do executes. I cannot convert this. I cannot even figure out what potentially would run at that time. So there's a bunch of things why this would be very difficult to do, and it would take us a long time to really do this. So it's not, and I don't think it's really feasible because you still have that level of 10% uncertainty at the end anyway.
Okay, thank you.
But we looked at this, so it's not just something we just said. We didn't think about it.
You mentioned IRIS for Health.
Yes.
What, if anything, is the advantage to using that? Does that reduce the amount of work you'd have to do for an in-place conversion?
No.
Is it a kind of a temporary
No, IRIS
thing?
for Health is just a different product.
Okay.
HealthShare Health Connect is more like the integration engine, where IRIS for Health is really for building applications on top of HealthShare applications for it, not just for integration purposes. So it's a totally different product, and it's also only first available with InterSystems IRIS. There's nothing that you need to convert to. However, if you're sitting on a HealthShare Health Connect and you really think I want to do the other part, then you might want to go from Health Connect and convert to InterSystems IRIS for Health because you really want to build applications. But you use InterSystems IRIS Health Connect for this today. That's why this was a topic. Yeah? Sorry for not being clear on this. No, you're right. I wasn't clear, so it's my fault. All righty. Thank you all very, very much for taking time and participating.